Where'd he go? I targeted him right to this spot. He should be here. We're talking Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. Hit it. It was 1993. NASA lost contact with the Mars Observer. The World Wide Web was born at CERN. Jurassic Park topped the box office. And Lois and Clark Kent were on your small screen every week. I'm your host, Jerry D, with another episode of Totally Rad Christmas, the podcast that talks all things Christmas in the 80s. Toys, movies, specials, music, and fads. If it was gnarly during Christmas in the 80s and 90s, we got it covered. Now, joining me is a Totally Rad Christmas all-star, Anthony Caruso, one of the hosts of the Way Awesome 'Tis the podcast. Anthony, how's it going?
Back! Thanks for having me again.
I think at this rate, you're going to be on more than my brother, and he might get a little bit jealous.
I'm just glad I haven't done anything to, be banned from the show.
No. There's
Not yet.
No, and I'll even, a couple of episodes ago, Vinny Brzezinski, he even mentioned, just to push my buttons specifically, that Die Hard was a Christmas movie, and he's still not banned, so I think you're okay.
I mean, good for Vinny.
I had a feeling you'd enjoy that, but no, I don't like to ban people from my show unless they really, really do something bad. But I think you're okay.
That's hilarious, because if it was up to me and I wasn't overruled by Julia and Tom, tons of people would have been banned from our show. But
well, I hope yours truly is accepted from that list. But
no comment. Nah, I'm joking.
I
don't think I've had any guest I would want to ban from our show.
I'm glad you said that, because I'm sure there's a few
even when they have
unfollow.
Even when they have wrong opinions like you do about certain holiday movies.
Well, if you mean wrong meaning right, then yes, you're correct. But if not, that's okay. Okay, so Lois and Clark. What's your thought?
Jerry, before we get into Lois and Clark,
Okay.
since this is a comic book episode,
Okay.
I think we have to pay tribute to Mr. Chadwick Boseman briefly.
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, that was a super crazy
Shock.
Yeah.
I'm still not over it. I couldn't believe that. I saw the news, I saw it on Twitter right after the news broke, and I saw it as a tweet. And it was because tweets only have 240 characters.
Right.
It had been screen capped, the statement.
Right.
I was like, this is fake. And then I saw this coming from his official account. I was like, oh, man. And then sure enough, I Googled it. It was a top hit over everything.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and to think that he was suffering from that cancer when he filmed Black Panther and the two Avengers movies and a bunch of other non-comic related stuff, it's crazy.
Well, probably also during Civil War when he debuted, because that came out in 2016, I think.
Yeah, so that was when
it was diagnosed. So he probably already was suffering from it, and all of a sudden was like, "Oh man, what's going on?" And then went to the doctor or something. But yeah, that was crazy, and there have been tons of tributes and memes and everything, showing him and Stan Lee, and it just every time I read all of them, it was just
I did too,
and in the heart,
And actually, yesterday I had to. I realized I did not have a Black Panther ornament for my Christmas tree, so I ordered one off Amazon. Because I have a bunch of Marvel and DC ornaments for my Christmas tree and from Hallmark.
So do I.
And And the Hallmark, I guess Amazon had some Hallmark Black Panther from last year, and
Yes.
so it's like $9.99 on Amazon. So I was like,
Nice.
gotta pay tribute to the king.
That was one of the ones we got, actually, the Black Panther one. So
It's a cool looking ornament.
it is. It really is. Yeah, I like that one. He's like kind of ready to, I don't know, leap out of a tree onto some bad guys or something. I don't know, but
But there are so many beautiful tributes. I mean, even I
all
wanted
his
to share on
Avengers
Facebook.
co-stars too. Yeah.
I wanted to share it on Facebook, but I didn't see their page posted on Facebook. They posted it on Twitter. Even DC put out this beautiful statement, something like, "To the king who transcended universes, like Wakanda forever," and like it was this beautiful. I was like, "Oh,
That's cool.
yeah."
Oh,
And I think, I mean, a lot of people said it. There, including in the Tissa Podcast Facebook group. April had this really nice write up about it in that group, but it's just so sad. Like, he meant a lot to people in general, but especially young Black kids who finally had representation, and for him to be the one like taken away like that from everyone, it's tragic, man.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, and he was only 3 years older than I am, so it's like you never know, and I mean, you never know. So it's always a good reminder to.
Forgot you were that much older than me, or I was that much younger than you.
Yeah,
Age joke in 5 minutes in.
Where's your Tis the Podcast bingo? But yeah, I mean, it's a good reminder to always love the people you're with, and just.
And you never know what battles people are suffering. To also always be kind and empathetic and everything like that,
Mm-hmm. Or
it's
just like Bill Murray said, you get greedy for that Christmas feeling, and then you're nicer, you're a little bit kinder, and that's the way we always want to be. And so I think it's a good reminder to be that way.
I mean, yeah, I've mentioned it before on our show. Like, I think that's one of the best things about the Christmas season. Like, it really does make most people a little kinder. Obviously, you have your Scrooges and people, the Grinches, and people who get a little more depressed around the holidays for various legitimate reasons, whether they're spending it alone or what have you,
or loss,
or loss. But a lot of people do act that much nicer on the holidays, and that's why. That's why we do what we do, right? We want to hold on to that feeling all year round.
And bring it to others as well. Yeah.
Yep. So sorry for derailing at the beginning
that's
here,
good.
but
I'm glad you brought it up. It's still kind of sore, so I wasn't going to say anything, but I'm glad you did. So thank you.
No problem.
But as far as Superman goes, what do you remember about Lois and Clark and Superman in general? I mean, like, what's your histories or, your general thoughts on them?
So let me start with my Superman in general history. Anyone who listens to my show, anyone who listens to your show, I mean, I brought it up on Todd's show. Everyone knows I'm a Batman guy.
Right.
I've told this story a million times. There are pictures of me a few months old in Batman onesies. Batman was always part of my life.
Nice.
From always. And because of Batman, he was my intro to the DC universe, and that's kind of why I'm more of a DC guy than a Marvel guy. Mm-hmm. Even though I know you're a Marvel guy, I love Marvel too. I really do. And no one is denying, including myself, that Marvel does the movies better. Nobody's denying it.
I like to think I'm a just comic book guy in general. I mean, I love both, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
Right. Although, not to poke the devil a little bit. I feel like at least up until a few years ago. I mean, Marvel really took off. They made B-list characters A-list, right? Let's be real about that.
They made like D-list characters A-list. I mean, let's be honest.
Right. So I would say up until a few years ago, if there had been a Mount Rushmore of superheroes, it would have been Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and Spider-Man.
Yeah.
That would have been the four.
Yep.
And I think there's still an argument that, in a lot of people's Mount Rushmores, they would appear
it would still
too.
Be that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Batman was my intro to this DC universe and comics in general. But right behind Batman was Superman. So I was born in 1989. So I grew up on Batman, the animated series. Mm-hmm. And right with Batman, the animated series, was Superman, the animated series, and Justice League and Justice League Unlimited.
Yes.
So I was of that time. So besides Batman, I was a huge Superman fan. And, in fairness to Marvel, X-Men, the animated series, and Spider-Man had one around, Spectacular Spider-Man, which came later, but I love that one too. But
that was a good one too.
But so it was really Batman the Animated Series and Superman the Animated Series. And I always loved Superman. Even though I'm a Batman's my number one. Superman is the granddaddy of all superheroes. He was the first.
Yeah.
And he's still, when you think of the stereotypical superhero, it's him. He's probably the most iconic one, the big S on his chest, you know, hope, justice, the American way, and everything like that. Truth, justice, and the American way. Ooh,
I didn't want to say anything, but yeah.
Caught myself. So yeah, I was a huge fan, and am a huge fan of Superman. I prefer my Superman. Also, I like Man of Steel, which I know we have a contention about, but I do prefer my Superman, Christopher Reeve, hopeful and optimistic and smiley. And this leads me to Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, because that is how he is on this show too.
That's true. He really
like
is, Dean
as
Cain,
Dean Cain, as cheap as his costume is and as cheap as the effects were, he actually personality-wise made an excellent Superman. So I remember, truthfully, I don't think I've seen the show all the way through.
Oh, okay.
I do remember catching episodes after school or on TBS or TNT in reruns in the mid to the late 90s. And, you know, I can see why I liked it back then. You know, it's very kid friendly. It's very family friendly. And it's just so optimistic. It's light, fair. And when I was watching it today in preparation for this show, number one, I forgot how cheesy it was.
It's very, very 90s, like very of its time, you know. I mean, it's compared to Christopher Reeves. I mean, they're also of their time, but they're also, in a different way, they're timeless.
Yes.
Whereas this one, I mean, everything about it just screams like 90s.
I mean, everything about it screams something, and I'll tell you, and we'll get into it when we get into the episodes. That Toy Man episode where he makes everyone act like little kids, and I don't know what Terry Hatcher was doing as Lois Lane when she was acting like a kid, but I was sitting there like with my mouth open, like trying not to roll my eyes. But this took me back to a simpler time, and they're not works of art. I enjoyed watching these episodes for your show. And I felt myself thinking by the end of it, like, I wish there were, like, the CW verse is so, like, unnecessarily dark and teenage drama-y. Yeah.
It's very melodramatic, yeah.
Right. And, like, not every superhero movie or TV show has to be Batman. Yes. Batman is dark and melodramatic. Make Batman dark and melodramatic. Superman doesn't have to be that way. Wonder Woman doesn't have to be that way. And that's why I love Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. I think she's the closest thing on DC side we have to Christopher Reeves nowadays.
I agree. I think Henry Cavill could be amazing if he just had like the right script and director.
Me too.
I mean,
the Justice League reshoots, awful.
They are
awful, especially that CGI, and you can tell.
I don't even want to get into the CG now. It's so bad.
You could tell where the reshoots were; they were so obvious.
Yeah.
But the few scenes Whedon added of Superman where he was optimistic, I was like, man, Henry Cavill would make a great freaking Superman.
Yeah, because not only does he look the part, he's like super cut and just built, but when he's happy and when he's allowed to be full of hope and joy and just everything that you think of when you think of Superman, I mean, he really does radiate that Reeves-ness that you're talking about. And
right.
And yeah, so I think he could have been really great, and so I'm excited to see what happens in the future, but also like bummed because of what we've gotten in the past. But
right, yeah, exactly. And not to get too off topic here, but one of the things I disagree with Zack Snyder is he mentioned once that there's no way to do Superman without making him overly cheesy nowadays, and I completely disagree. You take Captain America and give him Superman's powers, boom, there's Superman.
Yep,
boom, that's it. That's it.
Exactly.
Simple.
You're exactly right. And which is, I mean, it's also a testament to Chris Evans being able to to portray that. But no, I agree, and I think Superman, he needs to be. I mean, there's that one famous comic, and of course I said it's super famous, and now I can't think of which one it is, where he talks down like a suicidal jumper.
Oh man, that's one of my favorite. Like, that's the thing. People make fun of Superman for like saving cats from trees, but that's Superman. Nothing is too small for him. Exactly. He's going to help a little kid who loses their cat. Yep. He's going to spend 5 hours talking somebody down from a ledge and making them realize they're not alone. That's who he is.
Yeah, because he could have just whisked them down, no big deal, but that wouldn't solve the problem. Right. And so he stands and he tries to, I mean, that's Superman. He tries to fix the problem. He tries to get to the heart of it. And so,
right, whereas Batman would have been like, what's his name in Lethal Weapon? You want to jump? You want to jump? You can't handcuff the guy.
And then he just would have had a grappling gun or something at the end. Yeah. But yeah, I completely agree. Not every superhero needs to be Batman. And I also have a huge love for Batman. I mean, he's my favorite superhero as well, even though now I've diversified myself a lot to where I love a bunch, but he's still my favorite. But still, it's like Batman is Batman for a reason. And it's when it's dark, it works, but that's because that's where he operates best. If you think about it, Superman is much more in the light. It's like the Fantastic Four when Josh Trank tried to redo that, the movie we never speak of, but
except for the good CGI effects on the Thing. I liked the Thing.
I did like the Thing, yeah. But I mean, it's like the Fantastic Four is not dark and gritty. They're also like just about adventure and exploration, and it doesn't. To your point, I mean, not everything has to be like that.
And that's the thing Marvel nailed. They learned to trust the source material for their characters. Like even, I will call them, even the crappy Marvel movies like Thor 2.
Oh, that's the worst. I hate Thor.
At least Thor's being Thor. At least Thor's being Thor. Yeah. Like I feel like one of the WB learned the wrong lesson from Christopher Nolan, and because of the success of the Dark Knight trilogy, they're like, everything has to be realistic, everything has to be dark. Mm-hmm. So as successful as that was, as much as it rejuvenated Batman in the public eye, I think at the same time it's a curse for WB comic book movies, because that's when they were like, this is a model for everyone.
For everything. No. Yeah. It's like, no, that would have been great for Batwoman, the show that they have, Batwoman. Arrow, I think it kind of worked, and then they kind of didn't, and then it kind of did again, and then
let's be honest. Arrow was the Batman of the CW verse because they couldn't use Batman.
He was, yeah. I mean, especially when you think of Green Arrow, you don't think of dark and gritty. You think of like the liberal hippie guy that is like, he's for the little guy. He's always going to be there, and he's going to question the authority of like the higher ups, because that's, I mean, who says that they're right? And I mean, it's not Batman, but they really made him Batman. Yeah.
but to what I was saying earlier about Lois and Clark, like when I was watching this today, I really do wish there was more of this lighthearted, family-friendly superhero fare on television that kids could enjoy.
Yeah.
Like that families could enjoy. Like, even, like, if you go back to the animated series from the 90s, like Superman and Batman and Justice League, like...
The Timverse.
Yeah, the Timverse. They had some lighthearted, inconsequential episodes. Like, I think of the Justice League Christmas one.
Oh, I love that one. That
one's on our list for next year. I love that one, too.
It's so good. I mean, they're just, it's Clark takes Martian Manhunter back home. I mean, it's, it's nice and lighthearted, and... you get to kind of, but at the same time, then it gets real deep, and
and
he's lonely.
But that's the thing, like, and that's the thing you can't really, I guess, explore in a 2-3 hour movie, right? Like, is the fact that these people are still people. They're gods, quote unquote, but they're people too. They have these emotions and feelings, and the good movies will delve into that as well. But at the same time, you only get so much in 2.5 hours, 3 hours. Whereas if you had a whole show like this, and I think that was this show's strength, at least watching the 3 episodes, we saw Lois and Clark, their relationship, their, what he was like as a human being. Yeah. I'm not saying they were my perfect ideal versions of the character.
No, they're not.
But I think there is a way to do a show like keeping this similar tone and make them more comic accurate. And I wish somebody would take that step nowadays, take that leap of faith nowadays. And all that's a convoluted way of saying I enjoyed these 3 episodes. But
we got there.
Sorry, but
no, it's okay.
You invite me on to do a DC thing, I'm gonna ramble.
No, it's okay. So this is a bonus episode. It's not like a regular one. So I'm probably gonna edit this and it's gonna drop soon. And the reason is because while it is from 93, that's when the show started, it's more, it's really deep 90s, it goes all the way to 97. So it's not really something I'd normally cover. But I really wanted to do these ones because I remember the show. I remember like waiting each week, when the show was going to drop and just, all of a sudden it's on and then we come sit down and like Superman, and also I remember
you were a huge fan of the show overall.
I did like the show overall, yeah, because I grew up watching
Good, because I have some questions for you later, because watching this, I realized I never saw the whole thing, so I definitely have questions about how they handled certain things. So
okay, so the show was actually started, of course, September of 93. It was developed for television by Deborah Joy Levine, and they kind of followed John Byrne's version, so it was like post-Crisis. This was literally just a few years after, Crisis on Infinite Earths. So they kind of took that mythology, but every once in a while they'd kind of delve also into like the pre-Crisis mythology for some of the characters that really hadn't been explored yet. But the whole thing was that they wanted to focus on, Clark Kent being the true personality and Superman being more of like the disguise rather than the other way around. And
which is, okay.
Yeah, and I think it worked in this, in this particular thing, especially because it's called Lois and Clark. And so they really did focus more on like the relationship between the two reporters rather than just Superman and him just saving the day all the time, until the end of the first season when she was fired as showrunner and new producers came on, and then they focused more on the action. So the ones that you saw were with the newer direction, which has a little bit more action and less of like the human interaction.
I saw the more action-filled episodes.
Nope. And then, of course, they really get into like the relationship and the romance between, the two titular leads. But it ran for 4 seasons. And that 4th season, it had like a super strong second, super strong third seasons, to where they thought, well, we could move it to this new spot on like Sunday at a certain time. And after it moved, it started doing worse. And so then they tried to fix it by moving it to a different slot, but it was also not a great slot. And so it was doing worse. And so even though they announced they were going to make a 5th season, they decided to just cancel it instead. So there's like, it ends on a cliffhanger that's just unresolved. And so
what's the cliffhanger? You need to tell me.
So during the 4th season, they realize, because they're married, they get married in the 4th season, and they realize that they cannot conceive children together. And so in the very last episode, they find a baby, and it says like, "This is with a note that says something like, "This is yours." And yeah, it's awkward, and it's supposed to be. Or they talked, the producer and writer ended up saying that it was going to be resolved in the next season, where it was a Kryptonian royalty, like a baby from Kryptonian royalty, and they were going to raise him and protect him from, some assassins or something like that. And so that was going to be like the thing. So a kid was going to be essentially thrown into the mix, which I think.
Oh, that's always like. Yes, it would have been cool, but that's always like a last note of a show.
Yeah, like you're on your last legs when you start doing that.
And one more question before we get into these specific episodes.
Okay.
Did they kill Lex Luthor off?
Yes. So in the end of the first season, season finale, he actually jumps off because the cops were coming, and like he's at the top of his building. And rather than go to prison, he jumps off the building, and Superman was weakened by kryptonite, and so he wasn't able to actually save him. But his body disappears from the morgue. Now, the whole thing was because John Shea, who is the Lex Luthor, he was tired of the commute going from LA to New York to see his family the whole time. And with all the long hours, he was missing his family. and they wouldn't move the show. And so he decided, he asked to please be written off. So he came back for like an episode in season 2 and like 2 or 3 episodes in season 3 and then another episode in season 4. But really, he just didn't want to be away from his family so long. And
I mean, it's understandable, but I mean, that sucks.
I know. I enjoyed his Lex Luthor because, Gene Hackman is a great Lex Luthor. I liked him, but he was definitely pre-crisis. He was, and for some reason they turned him into like a real estate guy instead of like the mad scientist.
Oh my God, that's the worst thing about those old Superman movies. Every plot was a real estate like scheme.
Mm-hmm.
Every one. And I'm gonna have the unpopular opinion here. Probably, I really liked Spacey as Luthor.
I thought Spacey did a great job of being Hackman as Luthor.
But at the same time, he also did a real estate scheme.
Well, because he was also a little more sinister. I mean, Kevin Spacey in general is kind of a creepy dude. And,
yeah.
I mean, Kaiser Soze. But, I thought he did a great job. Plus his own kind of menace really added to it. But I thought John Shea, who I think it's pronounced Shea, excuse me, but who he portrayed that post-crisis Lex Luthor, that more of the businessman. All of a sudden, he was like an industrialist. He was still super brilliant. He was still, a mad scientist, but he was also a very smart businessman.
So he played the one. Yeah. So do you think they would have gone that route had he been on the show more? Because that's the Lex Luthor I like. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they totally would have. Because he was an industrialist in the very first, in the premiere episode. He has this whole plan to sabotage this new space shuttle and space station thing in order to have NASA, quote unquote NASA, essentially rely on his new space shuttle to take the people. I mean, that's like total Lex Luthor,
Yeah, that really is.
Things like that. And so I think he would have been amazing if they had let him go, if they had let him just keep going. But they didn't want to work with him, and so it is what it is. You know
who was not amazing in these episodes, if I may say so? General Sam Lane.
Oh yeah,
total
General,
different,
right?
Yeah, General Sam Lane.
You mean
total different
doctor.
Character?
Doctor.
Yeah, he was a scientist here instead of
Yeah. There's a lot of that too, where they just change things and they borrow from different continuities and I get it, they could, but at the same time, when we're so used to something and then we don't get to see it, it's kind of a disappointment. But
Perry White was kind of a creep.
Perry, I like Perry, but yeah, there's a few episodes where
not to give away the ending, my "gag me with a spoon" is going to be a Perry quote. If I can find the quote, I should have written it down.
Nice. I gotcha. So we're here to talk about 3 Christmas episodes in particular. It was from season 2, season 3, and season 4. Now the season 2 one is, it's like my second favorite. It was still terrible, but I think I liked it a little bit better than the Intergang one.
100%. Mine were ranked 4, 2, 3.
Me too. Yeah, 4, 2, 3, all the way. Mr. Mxyzptlk comes out in season 4. Intergang is season 3, and season 2 is actually Toyman, who of course they never call Toyman. You just have to know his name is
Thomas Jefferson. Played by George Jefferson and Wheezy.
Yes, which, by the way, when I think of Toyman, I do not think of the Jeffersons. I'm sorry.
And he played him like George Jefferson, too. Like the way he moved and everything and walked, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty much, it was just George Jefferson, which is strange. It was a strange choice to cast him, first of all, because her character is, of course, completely made up. But
that was clearly stunt casting, like one of those primetime stunt casting. Hey, look who we got for this episode, right?
Yeah,
it had to be.
Pretty much, yeah. But he plays Winslow Schott, who DC fans will know as Toyman, who, again, depending on your continuity, they kind of took a little bit from both post and pre-crisis. So I'll just kind of give the general breakdown for Toyman in pre-crisis, but essentially he was just a brilliant toy maker. And he started designing like even robots and things like that. His wife, although it turns out it actually wasn't his wife, it was a toy, an android that he made. But his wife, quote unquote, dies in a car accident, and he kind of loses it, and he kind of goes crazy. And that's basically the Toyman. Although he did for a brief period kind of turn good.
Now I do have a question for you. On your list of Superman villains, where does Toyman usually fall for you?
I honestly usually forget Toyman. It's like Lex Luthor, Brainiac,
Doomsday,
Bizarro.
So did this show ever do Bizarro? They had to have, right?
I don't recall them doing Bizarro per se, but they did kind of do like an evil Superman clone kind of thing. It just wasn't Bizarro. And I get it, they're, like you said, it's kid friendly, and Bizarro can be kind of creepy and
I mean, he basically looks like a decomposing Superman, right?
Yeah. Parasite, I like the Parasite.
That's what I was gonna say. After Luthor, it's probably Parasite for me. Honestly, I love how he transports him into that ideal world, and that's how he, subdues him, like makes him live out this fantasy. I love that. Oh, and that's one of my favorite episodes of the animated cartoon too, where he transports the Justice League into these animated worlds. That's Parasite, right?
Parasite is the one that can suck your power. Are you thinking maybe about Despero or Mongol? No,
I don't know. I thought it was Parasite, but either way.
Maybe he does. I don't remember. I know Mongol is the one that in the very famous Alan Moore story for The Man Who Has Everything, Mongol is the one that introduces that creature, and it like attaches to you and it makes you live like you're.
Okay, that's it. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But I thought that had a similar name. I thought he called it a Parasite. That's why again. Okay. Anyway.
And I can't remember what it's called. It's like the black something or the ebony something, but yeah, that was a classic one, and Mongol is the one that kind of gave it to Superman. And so then Wonder Woman and Batman and the comic Robin is there when they did it in DC, in Justice League. Of course, Robin wasn't part of that, so it was just Wonder Woman and Batman. But it was great. It was like really close to the comic, and I thoroughly enjoyed that episode. And so yeah, that would be kind of like my list. Toyman, I always forget he's like a Superman villain.
I mean, he falls down there for me with the ventriloquist on Batman's side.
I'm not a fan of the ventriloquist. I hated those episodes when he was on, because I always want to see like the big villains, like Joker and Penguin and Catwoman and Mr. Freeze and Riddler and all those guys, and Two-Face and even Clayface, but Scarecrow.
Even Man-Bat. I am still upset Man-Bat. It's never got a movie.
I would have
taken... Well, just like I can't believe 5 Superman movies, 6 Superman movies at this point, we never got Brainiac.
Mm-hmm. Well, he was planned for part 3, but it kind of fell through, and then they ended up doing something like an homage to it with that crazy supercomputer kind of thing. And the Robot Girl. I don't know if you remember Superman 3, but...
Yep.
Yeah,
yes.
But there was a plan to eventually have Brainiac in there, and it kind of got away from him, which is a shame, because I think I would have loved to have seen Christopher Reeve as Superman fight him.
Wasn't Nick Cage as Superman supposed to fight Brainiac?
I believe that was also the plan. Yeah, and those pictures are crazy. Like, they're just next level bonkers for Superman. I mean, I'm sorry.
So speaking of next level,
is not Superman.
The bees.
Hey, this kryptonite. It's bad.
So speaking of not Superman, like when I was watching this, Dean Cain has such a connotation now as being this Hallmark really bad actor in these like C-list Christmas and Lifetime movie, Hallmark and Lifetime movies. So it was hard for me to see him as Superman.
I understand. Yeah.
They could have, they could easily have substituted Candace Cameron Bure as Lois Lane, and the two of them could have had their own show together.
Well, he has that one with Melissa Joan Hart, that one Christmas one. So
Yeah, I know
throw her
exactly
in
what you're
there.
talking.
No, I know what you mean. Um, the one thing that always bugged me about the show was that his Clark Kent and his Superman were not as different as I would have liked.
That's the first thing I noticed in watching these today. I was like,
How do
neither
they not
Perry
know?
nor Lois realizes this guy is, and that's something that bothers me about. That's one thing I like that Snyder did. Lois Lane figured it out right away,
Yeah,
and that's because if
yeah,
she's supposed to be a Pulitzer-winning journalist, she would figure it out right away.
yeah, exactly.
And
But
I like the Perry in the comics, and I think it's a Batman comic that says it actually. I think he has a inner monologue where he says Perry White's too good a reporter not to have figured out
not
by
to have figured
now
it out.
who
Yeah.
Clark Kent is. Makes me wonder how long ago James Gordon figured out who I was because he's too good a cop.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah,
I love that.
which is true when you think about it. I mean, it's like how yeah, how do they not know? I mean, they look exactly the same, first of all. And I get it. I mean, I do sometimes, when without my glasses, like, well, yeah, I'm a little bit different, but I mean,
Well, they did this
not different,
experiment, right,
not
with
different
Henry
enough.
Cavill.
What's that?
Did you see this? You know that show? I believe it was Billy on the Street that did this.
No, I
You know
haven't
Billy on the
seen.
Street?
Mm-mm.
When Man of Steel or Justice League was coming out, he brought Henry Cavill to New York City, to Times Square,
Uh-huh.
and put him in a crowd as himself. Everyone recognized him. And then he sent him out into the crowd like an hour later, a different crowd and everything, with
Hmm.
glasses on, and nobody came up to him. Like
Oh
apparently
wow.
glasses like made him look different enough. A lot of people just walked past him, and I think that is true. Like I remember seeing your gifs on Facebook of like you and the
Oh
Captain
yeah.
America thing and
Yeah.
stuff, and I'm like, wow, he looks so different without his
I do
glasses.
look
Glasses
different,
really
yeah.
can change you if you.
But I mean, Clark is always disappearing. He's literally like the same build as the guy, that they
Right.
work with so closely. I mean, it's iffy. But his are like so similar. There's this one scene that I talked about in my Superman episode with Tim Babb, where he's about to tell Lois like who he is, and he stands up straight and takes his glasses off and deepens his voice, and all of a sudden, it's like this crazy. He's like, Lois, there's something I need to tell you, and then he changes his mind and he kind of slouches again and he puts his glasses back on. He's like, at first I was, I mean, it's brilliant the way he got it. And I think Dean Cain, I mean, he's doing the best he can, but it's too similar to me. It's his Superman is the same as his Clark Kent, and
I mean,
it's a shame.
so this first episode,
Hmm.
first of all, I'm gonna say what a stupid toy the toy maker comes out with.
Yes.
This rat, this rat
Atomic,
that everyone loves.
atomic space rat.
Secondly, I love how much Superman Clark loves Christmas, and Lois just is kind of like a
Like
bit
a grump.
cynical.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, meeting her parents in the next 2 seasons worth of episodes, I see why she hates Christmas because her parents were insufferable.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Yeah. No
But
doubt.
I think it's such a Superman thing. I feel like Superman would be all about that time of year, like
Well,
this peace on earth, goodwill toward men.
exactly. And then we do see that in that Justice League episode that we mentioned earlier, where he's so excited and he has a childlike innocence still. He's like, "Oh, I wonder what I got." Oh, you use lead lined wrapping paper. You could totally see him doing that. I mean, he's just it's great. But yeah,
My one
so,
complaint about that episode, just because you brought it up again, was Batman wasn't in it. They kept him out completely, which is a Batman thing. I don't think Batman would be. I mean, you see it in the Batman, the animated series, how excited Robin was to celebrate Christmas, and Batman was so excited when the Joker broke out because they had something to do,
they had
and
something to
Robin was
do.
upset.
Yeah.
But Alex Ross, I think it was Alex Ross. Yeah, because he does all these amazing paintings and drawings and stuff.
Oh yeah.
I think he has one of
yeah,
the
I know
Justice
exactly what
League
you're talking
celebrating
about.
Christmas, and Batman's just looking in from the outside, like depressed. Have you ever seen that one?
I know exactly
Yeah.
which one you're talking about, and it looks like Superman is almost like beckoning to Bruce to like come in,
Yep.
and you don't really know, is he talking to Bruce or is he just talking to whatever? But it kind of looks like he sees him through the wall and is like trying to get him to come in, and he's just standing there watching, and that's so Batman. But it's also so Superman to invite the guy that that even if he is a curmudgeon, invite him in. You know, he's part of the team. He's his best friend, and
that's what I love about their partnerships, right? Like he
so
brings
opposite.
the dark, he brings the light. You know, they balance each other. That's why I am sad the first time we saw them on screen the first time it was a Versus movie rather than they should have done a World's Finest first.
I completely agree. Yes, World's Finest first. You know, and I do love the comic. You know, when the Dark Knight Returns and all that, when he does fight Superman, but at the same time, it's like that particular Elseworlds comic probably is not the one you should have gone to have like your two biggest guys on screen for the first time, and then the Trinity, really, because Wonder Woman comes out later. I mean, it just seemed like a waste. But anyway, I don't want to keep being negative about the Snyderverse, especially when there are some good points about it. So instead, we're going to talk about Season's greedings, not greetings, but greed. Haha, pun.
Okay.
Season 2.
This guy's plan, Toymaker's plan.
Mm-hmm.
He got fired from a factory job, right? Or he quit a factory job because he made all these teddy bears that kids hated him, and kids told him, "I hate your toys." Yes. This drove the guy crazy to the point he quit and created this factory of his own. He's like a scientist, right?
Yes,
a chemist,
essentially. Yeah, and he created this gas that comes out of this rat. It's an atomic space rat. And when you squeeze it, this gas is emitted, and the gas actually makes children greedy, hence the D in greed means. But it also, on adults, because their brain chemistry is a little bit different, it makes them more childlike, but also greedy.
Oh, my God.
And Lois really overplays it.
Oh, man. I want my rat. Like it was it reminded me of the Madonna Christmas Santa baby one. Yeah, that's what it reminded me of.
And I really do. I mean, I really do enjoy Terry Hatcher as Lois Lane. I think she's kind of got that combo of that where she's soft on the inside but tough on the outside kind of thing. I think she nails that. But yeah, she really overdoes it on this one, and to the point where it becomes just it just drives you crazy, essentially.
The funniest thing about this toy, though, is the gas smells awful. So when everyone picks up the toy, they say it smells awful, then sprays into their face. They have 1 second of disgust, and then they're like, oh, I need more of this. And I'll say it was very funny to me when Clark was at the newspaper at the Daily Planet and got sprayed with Jimmy. And they go to the M&Ms, and Jimmy's eating the M&Ms, and Clark is like, "Look over there!" And then he uses this super sucking power. Like, as far as effects in this terrible '90s,
that was probably one of the better ones.
That was pretty good. Yeah,
I did like that one. Yeah, there was a few good bits here and there that I really enjoyed, but yeah. So they have to figure out, or they notice that something's going on, and it's because Clark's parents show up for Christmas because it's Christmas time, and Lois immediately grabs a whole bunch of presents that they're carrying in, like mine or whatever, and then they witness Clark burn with his heat vision, secretly burn Lois's heels on her shoes, and so because of that, I think it was because of a race or something like that. She was trying to grab something, and so his mom takes him aside to scold him. And she gives one of the best lines. I could see Ma Kent saying something like this, which is I've never put you across my knee and whooped you, essentially, because I never had to, but I've got a mind right now to I forgot what she says, but I mean, it's so perfect.
I know exactly what line you're talking. So, not a fan of John Kent being alive.
I gotcha. I actually kind of liked it because he was alive for quite a while in the comics. That was kind of him dying was something that was, I don't want to say made for the movie because it wasn't, but it was really popularized by the Christopher Reeve by the movie.
Yep.
So I actually kind of liked it. I thought it was a different take. and because it was kind of a different take, I enjoyed it, especially because I've seen so many comics with where he is alive. Although he did die, I believe, recently again. so he comes and he goes depending on which continuity of DC you're going for. But I kind of liked his John.
So I really liked Ma Kent in these
too.
episodes.
Yeah,
wasn't the biggest fan of Pa Kent. He seemed almost. And again, I guess it depends on your interpretation of Pa Kent, which inspiration you're taking from. But I like my Pa Kent a little harder, like where he still cares, but he's a little more of a. You know what I mean? He's a little more of a harder,
just a little more strict.
Not to crack. Yeah, exactly.
I gotcha. Yeah.
But yes, that line Ma Kent says about taking him over her knee and whooping him.
Had me laughing. Like, yes. But then, when she says that, he's kind of like, wait, what? And they realize something's not right. And then he says he remembers coming off the elevator and being sprayed by the rats. But you're right. Yeah, the whole plan is for for Toyman is to have these rats kind of show kids how greedy they are, and then things run amok, and he makes lots of money on the side as well.
It's a weird plan.
It is a weird plan. I don't quite understand it. I think he's just mad at the kids, and so he's got to get back at them. But instead of doing something really evil, because it's revealed later on that he still loves kids, he really is a children person. He couldn't really harm them per se, and so instead he had to just make them, I don't know, hurt themselves. I don't know. It's not a great plan.
Well, so I don't understand why Wheezy is going along with this at all, because clearly she has reservations about it from the beginning.
His assistant.
Again, just call her Wheezy, Mrs. Jefferson.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm fine with that, Wheezy. She does have reservations, but I think because it's revealed that she kind of has a thing for him, and so maybe because that's what he wants and she kind of likes him, she's just going along with it. But we see later on that it does come to like a breaking point, and it's like she leaves him a Dear John letter essentially. And she goes, because the whole time she's like, what about those bears you made? Kids did love them. They were great. And he's like, no, remember this. And, he quotes like what some kid said about your bears stink or whatever. And, but later on she goes to hang out. She goes to give out those bears because she really enjoys, she really thought that was like the pinnacle of his creativity as a toy maker. And
so this is the strongest part of the episode for me, and it ties into that. It's this side plot where Clark / Superman befriends this Salvation Army Santa, who I guess works at an orphanage, and goes around trying to get toy makers to donate toys to the orphanage. And this Santa, he has, at this home, there's this little girl who hasn't talked since her father died, and it's this very sweet moment at the end when she gets George Jeffers, the toy maker's bear, and she talks to it. And, this is the first time you heard her talk in years, and it kind of does redeem the toy maker a bit. Yeah. And I love that, and this, again, is such a Superman moment to me. He shows compassion there at the end. Like, even though toy maker's going to jail, he tells the cops, I'll take him in later, or let him just have this night. Like, I'll watch him. Yeah. Like, he lets him have this moment of joy at this Christmas Eve, seeing all the kids play with his real toys. I really like that.
Yeah. It did remind me very much of like Scrooged.
Yeah.
I remember when I first saw it, and I was like, that's kind of like that movie we saw. And watching it again was definitely like, it's Scrooged. But you're right, it does work. And I agree. I thought it was a really sweet moment, and I think it's made even better by the fact that she sees the bear from across the street, and the little girl runs out to go get it. And, she kind of freezes because, a horse-drawn carriage is coming towards him. And so she kind of freezes, and he notices. And so, Toyman runs out to go get her, and he dives on her essentially so that he would be run over instead of her. or kind of protect her a bit, and then of course Superman just goes and saves him real quick.
So this made me laugh, and I'll tell you why.
Okay, go for it.
I feel I feel like it would have had more of an impact if Toyman actually saved her.
Yes, I do.
Out of the way with her.
But we got to get more Superman action.
She freezes, and then he freezes with her, and then we have to get that really bad CGI effect of the cape blurring by and zooming across her.
Yeah, they couldn't do it well, so instead it's like, let's just blur it. It's just. But yeah, essentially he was gonna pour out all that stuff into the water supply. Is that what it was?
So he did. He
does pour it. Yeah, and so that's why he's gonna go to jail. But Superman is able to burn it out. I don't.
Okay, this blew my mind, and I'll tell you why.
I don't know.
He dumped it into Metropolis's water supply.
Yes.
Superman flies to go burn it out with his laser vision, and all of a sudden he's in the middle of the wild north, just snowy mountains everywhere, no city in sight, and just this giant lake full of this really bad yellow CGI liquid effect.
Yeah,
that he then burns out with his crappy laser eye effect. But it blew my mind. They didn't even try to CGI a bad city anywhere near it. He was in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense. Because, how far would Toyman have had to drive to go dump it all? I mean, it's I don't get it, but hey.
So I did like how melodramatic these villains were too. Like when Toyman was alone dumping this stuff, he has his long-winded monologue, even though no one's around him. Like, I'll show these people of Metropolis.
In a very George Jefferson way, yeah. Oh man, Sherman Hemsley, yeah.
I love Sherman. First of all, I love the Jeffersons, but I think I love Sherman Hemsley.
It was definitely an odd choice, but but yeah, I think overall of the three, like we mentioned earlier, this is definitely my second favorite. But to me, I really love the fourth one, and then it's like way down is this one, and then way down is the last one. Yes. There's a big gap, I think, between all of them. But
so the weirdest thing about this second one to me,
Denise Richards.
Well, I knew that was her. I picked her out right away. I was like, "Oh my god, that's Denise Richards."
Yeah.
But the Lois's father brings a girlfriend to Christmas, and it's this android doll he made. That was just weird, really weird and creepy to me.
Yeah, that is definitely weird. Yeah, so this is season 3, and it's "Home is Where the Hurt is" the name of the episode.
So give me some context, because I haven't seen the whole series. I've seen episodes here or there.
So they're engaged. Lois and Clark are engaged at this point.
So between season 2 and 3, she found out his identity.
Yeah, so it's in the cliffhanger of ending of season 2, he proposes to her. That's how it ends, on that cliffhanger where he's like, "Will you marry me?" So yeah, it ends where he proposes to her, and it's that's like the season's over. It starts the next season with her asking, who's asking, Clark or Superman? And so then she's kind of upset with him. Their relationship is kind of messed up for a long while. Eventually, of course, after shenanigans happen, they get back together.
So it can't have been that long, because this Christmas episode is 11 in, and they're living together at this point and engaged.
Well, it's it's
TV. Yeah,
it's TV. A few episodes, they apply things. A few weeks have passed, things like that. He ends up marrying a clone of her that Lex Luthor has swapped out, and he doesn't realize it until like their honeymoon or whatever. It's odd. The clone has to survive by like eating frogs or something, and that part's weird. And then she has, Lois, the real Lois, gets like amnesia, and of course she does. Clark is obsessed with finding her, but then the clone develops feelings for Clark, but she knows how much he loves the real her, so she helps to find the real Lois. And I mean, it's one of those things. And so of course they end where they're still engaged. But yeah, at this point they're engaged.
I did.
They're very much in love.
I did forget to say at the end of the last episode, I really did like that Clark canceled his Smallville plans, at least
Oh
for that
yeah,
night,
yeah. I did.
to spend Christmas Eve with Lois because she's going to be alone.
There was a great moment, yeah, and she goes all out. She dresses up. She makes a whole turkey dinner, for herself. Just
She
because
thought it
she's
was going to be
trying.
Superman who showed up, right?
Yeah,
Because I got a very Batman Forever vibe. Remember whenever Chase Meridian
yeah, yeah.
kept the windows open when she dressed in her nightie and everything, waiting for Batman to show up, and yeah.
Yeah,
That's the vibe I got from that one, which is funny
yeah.
because it was probably only like 2 years before Batman Forever, right? The year of Batman Forever.
Probably, yeah. But you're right. Yeah, it's she gets all dolled up. She goes all out with the food. She had mentioned to Clark she was going to be all by herself. He was going to go back to his parents. There's this moment where, like, there's a wind blowing, and it blows out the candles, and she thinks it's like Superman coming in, and she's kind of excited, and no, it's just the wind. But then it's a knock on the door, and it's Clark. And he says, she's like, I thought you were going to go see your parents. And he says, oh, my flight got snowed in. And then she immediately looks outside and said, it's not snowing. He says, oh, it's not. And then she does, like, oh, Clark, and
It was a great scene.
it was, yeah, I really enjoyed it. And he gives her he says, of course, it's from Superman, that she told him the story about, the childhood or whatever. And it's like a tree topper star that, oh gosh, I
And
forgot.
this is something I always hated about all this stuff. All the animated series, the Spider-Man movies, everything, where it's like, oh, your friend Spider-Man, or oh, your friend Superman. Like, come on! How is this one guy friends with them? Obviously.
Well, Spider-Man makes sense because he's supposed to be the official photographer, Peter Parker. But Superman, yeah, I don't know. I guess just because Clark's a reporter, I don't know. It's definitely suspicious, and it's suspicious that the people don't know it's suspicious. But yeah, so now we're on to this episode, season 3, which is it's definitely very odd. So she was supposed to spend like Christmas with her, with Clark and Clark's parents, when her mom like suddenly shows up. But it also turns out that like her dad has suddenly showed up with his like ridiculously younger girlfriend, who, spoiler alert, turns out to be an android that he created. Ooh,
And I love that part where he's like, Mr. Lane, she's been sweeping the same spot on the floor for about 30 minutes now.
Yeah.
Oh, just knock her upside the head and she'll stop, and you just see how horrified Clark is.
Although she does play a role later on, she's like the reason that they can like capture the bad guys and figure out that there's a bomb or something. But this whole thing is with Intergang. So Intergang was like huge in I don't remember if it's late season 2 or early season 3, but they bust it up. Lois and Clark, they get proof of who's running it. They, all that stuff, publish an expose. Superman also helps, and so they bust it up. But it turns out that the widow of the leader of Intergang, Mindy Church, although I don't know why they didn't use the real Intergang guy. It's not Bill Church. Instead of Morgan Edge, they use Bill Church for some reason. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, so it turns out
this
she like
is
starts
annoying.
Yeah, she tries to revamp Intergang. So she has a meeting with like all the mob heads. And as I think she kills one as well. And I mean, it's just so I did watch the season 2 and the season 4 one twice. I only watched this one once because I couldn't take it again. Because you're right, she's like ridiculously annoying. She does that Betty Boop type voice again. Oh, I'm just a girl and whatever, and no one trusts me, And but turns out she's like really smart. She's actually really tactical, and I mean,
well, and so her plan
done.
is to, for somehow totally against Superman canon. The government had Superman's ship he was flown in on.
Yeah,
and her plan is to get the Kryptonian virus off of it to make Superman sick because he won't be immune to like the common Kryptonian cold because he's never
grown up
on
there.
Krypton.
Mm-hmm. So he's got no Kryptonian antibodies or whatever.
Smart plan. Honestly.
It actually is a smart plan. It does make a lot of sense. Now I think they have it because it was taken, and I believe it was in season 1, where it's there's a guy that's just obsessed with aliens and stuff like that, and so he kind of tracks it to like the Kent farm, and so he ends up taking it eventually. But somehow I don't remember if it was Intergang or if it was Lex Luthor or Intergang after Lex Luthor, whatever. Somehow they get a hold of it, and so she ends up having it in storage. See, so when my wife and I were dating, like I think we were engaged at that point, but we decided like we needed something to do, and so we ended up buying like the DVDs of Lois and Clark. Like,
oh wow, nice!
All 4 seasons, and so we just kind of binged them, and so. But that was again. I mean,
is she a fan?
She is. Yeah, she was a fan too, awesome. And it's more her style. She's not really into the dark, gritty Batman stuff, and so this is something that we could kind of bond over, and so it was kind of cool. But we watched them all, and so it's been a while. That was about 12 years ago. So I'm trying to some of these continuity things I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. But yeah, so she has it. Mindy Church has this idea because the other gang leaders didn't like that she wanted to run Intergang again and essentially control all of crime. So they hire a hitman. They hire a hitman to take her out. And
oh man! So this is the part I was like, "Are we getting a Batman crossover? Is this a Joker?" And because this guy is dressed as a friggin' clown with bombs.
It's Joey Bermuda.
Which totally sounds like a Joker alias you would use.
It actually really does, and of course he's wearing like a Bermuda shirt and everything. It's dumb, but he tries to take her out and misses, and so she makes a counter offer and is like, exactly what you were saying. Well, hey, if he's from Krypton, then a Kryptonian virus could kill him. And he's like, well, where are we going to get one? She's like, oh, by the way. And she yanks up something.
By the way, here's my Deus Ex Machina. And then
it's right here, yeah. And so he, being a kind of scientist as well as hitman, like most are naturally, he manages to take a virus off of it. I mean, why they would even risk it, considering that they don't know if
humans
it would affect humans as well. I mean, that seems like ridiculously just unsafe. But
could have been a new plague for the planet.
Right? It's like a super plague. But yeah, so I guess he analyzes it and says, yeah, it's fine. This is like the nastiest of the nasty virus. Although how he
analyzes
I have no idea.
After he unfroze it and already sets it loose in our environment.
It's not a great plan, but I mean it's a good plan. It's not a great plan. But so she manages to trick Superman and sprays him with the stuff, and so he kind of starts getting sick. He's never been sick before, so Lois.
Well, I like it starts subtle at first. He sneezes, and they're shocked because he's never
sneezed. Yeah, and so then they're like, "You don't get sick," and he starts going downhill pretty fast. And luckily, Lois Lane's dad, who just happened to pop in, is also a scientist and doctor. And so he kind of figures out a way to, if we bring him completely near death, maybe the virus will think that, he's dead and it'll die, and then we can revive him.
And I can't help but thinking in a better written show that didn't kill off Lex Luthor, you would have had Lex Luthor in prison, and they have to kind of make a deal.
They have to go to him
and get him out, and he promises to heal Superman in exchange for immunity.
Complete. Yeah,
that would have been awesome.
It would have been amazing. I would have loved to see that, because I did love all the episodes where he came back. I mean, he was such a good Lex Luthor for this show. I mean, it was perfect, and even for the show, he was way better than Zuckerberg.
Do you like John Cryer? Because I haven't watched a lot of Supergirl, so I stopped really before the Lex Luthor episodes. But I heard he's actually pretty decent as Lex
He
Luthor.
actually is a good Lex Luthor too. I only saw him in the Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Oh yeah, he was in that,
and I thought he was pretty good. I mean, with what we can compare it to, it's like, yeah.
It just blows my mind. We've had every Joker who's played it, minus Jared Leto, has been amazing, and yet we haven't had a really, truly comic book accurate, amazing Lex yet. That blows my mind.
Well, see, and then that's the thing. It's like, well, which comics do we go? Are we going post-crisis or pre-crisis? And so I think Gene Hackman did pretty good for his pre-crisis self. Although, again, it's all about real estate, which, whatever. But post-crisis, the one that most of us from our generation know. Yeah, you're right. We haven't gotten like just that great, perfect portrayal.
I love when
I think out of all of them, John has come the closest, honestly.
I love the ruthless businessman Lex, the one who goes on to like use his contacts and his cunning skills to become president.
Genius,
much to Batman's like displeasure, because Batman hates when he's president. What was it? Was it Hush? He broke into Air Force One to get. I think it was Hush.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah,
that's another good Batman one. I gotta reread that one.
I'm telling you, 2021, me, you, and Tom, the Batcave.
The Batcave, yeah. I am down with that. So they go through with it, and Superman manages to save the day because Joey Bermuda, this assassin guy, he plants a bomb in Lois Lane's and Clark, or Lois's apartment, I suppose, because they were kind of actually getting suspicious of Mindy Church. So he plants a bomb, and luckily, while he's there, he doesn't realize that the robot girlfriend is there, and she records his message.
Because of course
she would. Yes. Hey, there's someone here that let me record this, I guess.
I will say this was a good. Lois realized something was up with this woman from the beginning.
Yeah.
Whereas, Superman and Perry were like, they were too sentimental in her words.
Yes. Yeah. Too sexist. But yeah, for real, this is one of the things that I liked about this version of Lois Lane. And don't get me wrong, I love Margot Kidder, I love Amy Adams, but I think this one was kind of more of that, cutthroat, investigative journalist, which Amy Adams did a good job with too. But I don't know, something about her and Henry
Margot
Cavill,
Kidder
I just
was
didn't like the
pretty
chemistry, I think, but.
Margot Kidder was pretty cutthroat herself. I won't say cutthroat. She was pretty. She cut down Clark a lot. She was kind of mean. She did have.
Yeah, you're right.
Although I still think she had the best Lois Lane moment ever in any media, which was, "I've got you. You've got me. Who's got you?"
Yeah. It's classic line. Yep. Oh man. So Mindy Church, thinking that Joey Bermuda has done a great job, makes a pass at him, and he rebuffs her because he's married and he believes in the sanctity of marriage.
Which made me LOL. So
an assassin, right? Like,
so have you watched that new animated adult Harley Quinn show?
No, I haven't, honestly.
Amazing. Like, seriously, such a good job of like these characters, even though they do it in this weird kind of goofy way.
Okay.
But and I'm not going to repeat it, but Harley puts together her own gang, and you know the character Dr. Psycho?
Yes.
Okay, so he is at the beginning of like episode 3, he's fighting Wonder Woman, and of course news cameras are recording and everything, and Wonder Woman beats him, and while he's on the ground, he calls her like the most awful word you can call a woman.
Okay.
And like at this point, like even the show, even though it's an adult show and they curse and stuff, they beep it out. And the next day, the Injustice League has a press conference with Lex Luthor standing in the middle, and Joker here, and like Black Manta here, and Lex Luthor's like, Dr. Psycho crossed a line last night, and we're revoking his membership to the Injustice League.
It's like, what? Let me just tell everybody who's in our evil gang.
But that's what it made me think of. But it was like, he crossed the line. You crossed the line. That's the sanctity of marriage. Even though I just tried to...
So because of that, as he frames him as the leader of Inner Gang, which is dumb, but it works. The cops buy it, and so they arrest him and all that stuff, and she's in the clear essentially. So she really is kind of cunning and smart, but yeah, she's like ridiculously annoying with that voice. Man.
I do always find it funny though. Before we move on from that in all these mediums, a villain has some weird line they run across. Do you remember the Jokers in Batman the Animated Series? I may be crazy enough to deal with the Batman, but the IRS, no thank you. He files his taxes.
Yeah, it is funny. It is great writing. Yeah, so that was this episode, and then everybody's happy at the end in Christmas. But
so I will say I loved the scene in this episode that it's an annual tradition apparently that Superman lowers the Christmas tree into the town square.
Oh yeah, that is kind of cool
for these kids.
Yeah,
and that's an Alex Ross painting too. It was in some comic. There you can Google Alex Ross Superman Christmas, and it's him lowering a tree into what looks like Rockefeller Center, but he's
nice.
lowering. It's awesome, yeah. So that
is awesome.
Like I will say, for all the, I don't want to call them faults, but all the faults and quotations these episodes have, they nail the Christmas side of things. I'll say
they really
that.
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they make it cozy, and again, a lot of that is because Clark loves it, and his parents are just that hometown vibe. I mean, just
Ma Kent had another one of my favorite lines this episode, and so she keeps trying to tell Lois something. Lois, can I speak to you? Lois, can I speak to you in the other room? And then her dad comes out of the other room, and she's like, Ma Kent, did you want to tell me something? Your father's here.
That is a good line. Yeah, that was a good line for sure. Oh,
I love how her mother kept saying, every time she was offered a drink, I'm an alcoholic, reformed. Normally people don't brag about that. They're just like, no, thank you.
Yeah, normally they just say no, thank you. Oh man! So we come to my favorite one, which is season 4's "Twas the Night Before Miximus."
Oh man,
which is a clever title, I thought. But
this one by far my favorite one.
Me too. I really, really enjoyed this one, and I remembered it. Like even when I had forgotten everything else about Lois and Clark, I always remembered Howie Mandel as Mr. Mixius Pitlick. And
so I was shocked it was him, and it took me about halfway through the episode to realize, is that Howie Mandel? And I said that to Sarah because Sarah was here. We were eating takeout, and she was like, "Yeah, I think it is." She was like, "Is that his real hair?" I was like, "No." She was like, "Well, he had hair at some point," and I was like, "I don't think that's his real hair."
He did, yeah. And to me, it looked like his real hair. Actually.
Really?
Uh-huh. And I remember when he came out, and I wasn't used to seeing him in a goatee, and I thought, wait.
The goatee is what threw me. Goatee is what threw me. It's amazing how facial hair can change somebody's face.
Well, and then nowadays he's completely bald. With just a little
and a germaphobe, so he doesn't get within like 6 feet of anyone.
Yeah, yeah, which is funny because he played a doctor on Saint Elsewhere for years.
And anyone who listens to this podcast knows that we have covered multiple Christmas Groundhog Day episodes. So this is just another one to add to my list. And I'm not opposed to like Groundhog Day. I like Groundhog Day. As the English would call it, piss takes. I like Groundhog Day inspired episodes. TV shows do it for the holidays, outside of the holidays. They do it a million times.
Yeah, they do.
And I'm always a fan. Some do it good, some do it better than others. I actually really liked the way this one was done.
I did too, because it wasn't like a full day. It was like only
4 hours.
4 hours.
4 hours.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As soon as it hit 4 o'clock, then it would go back to noon, which I thought was kind of cool. And I, out of all of them, I mean, I thought they were all great, but out of all of them, this one felt the most Christmassy. I mean, the
I
first
mean,
one,
I think because it had basically
like every
30
Christmas
full
tree.
minutes of Deck the Halls on a loop because he kept reliving those 4 hours over and over. I think that helped.
It's true. Um, so yeah, it starts off Lois and Clark. They're getting ready um, for everything, and Clark hears. No, by this point they are married, and Clark hears, oh, there's someone's in trouble, so he runs off, and that's where we get our first appearance of Mr. Mixie-Spitlick, which he's like,
Do
hey,
you like
where'd he
Mr.
go? He was just right here.
Where does he rank on your list of villains? Because I actually, he's
I
not
enjoy
toward the
him too,
bottom.
but I always
It's
kind
kind
of
of the
forget about
midway
him.
point for me.
I think so too, yeah.
Yeah.
Because he could, like, I remember in the cartoon, I thought he was kind of cool. The Superman, the one after Batman. In
Mm-hmm.
the earlier cartoons, I never quite liked him very much. And in the
Right.
comics, I was always waiting for Superman to do some more like fighting. It's
Well,
like,
I mean,
I didn't like reading about him
like a lot of comic characters, he's definitely become cooler in
throughout the years.
modern. Yeah, like when his design has evolved a bit. Like back when he was like, I mean, the very early appearances, he was literally like some kind of weird warped pixie mime thing. Like,
Yeah.
and like, yeah.
Well, and what I really liked about him was that there's a hint. They kind of suggest that he's also, what is it, the Impossible Man from the Marvel universe, because he says he mentions sometimes about the other group of like 4 people that he really likes to torment, and he never remembers what he looks like, in different universes, and so I mean, there's always like that little hint there, which again is kind of cool.
I mean, as comic nerds like ourselves, like that's still the dream to see on the big screen before we die, right? The Justice League Avengers crossover.
Yes,
like,
yes.
Like when Infinity War ended, like that's when I really wished there had been a really strong DC universe going on, because I would have loved a post-credit scene where Sam Jackson comes out and he's like, Thanos opened the multiverse, portals to another dimension. Where does it lead? Gotham or something like that. Like, oh, that would be so cool.
Can you imagine? Oh, wow. Which we might actually see quasi if they do the Squadron Supreme. Since they're kind of the equivalent, the analogs of of the Justice League. So you never know. And I have heard rumors that they do plan to have the Squadron Supreme in a couple of.
I mean, not to get on like because I love both universes. They both borrow from each other. There's an equivalent for every hero and every team in both universes.
Yeah, of course.
If one comes up with the team first, the other borrows it. If one comes up with the character first, the other borrows it.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you could go on and on forever about it. But I remember there was that crossover that they had planned to do, but were never allowed. This was back in the '60s, and so that's how the Squadron Supreme came about. It was essentially their way of getting the Justice League to fight the Avengers, and then the champions of Angor were the ones from DC's version of the Avengers. And although they chose like a weird lineup, I don't know why they didn't do like Cap and Iron Man, but it was like a Thor, a Scarlet Witch, a Quicksilver, and like a Wasp, I think, pastiche. I mean, it was an odd lineup, but whatever.
All I know is if they ever do it one day, hopefully before we die, like Batman just can't be surprised at all when this new universe comes into play. He's like, I examined the scientific data and knew the odds of another superhero team existed in a parallel universe is better than like has just a total Batman explanation for why he's not surprised at all.
Yeah, I could see him doing that. But yeah, so Mr. Mixie-Spitlick, his whole plan is to erase hope. And because he realizes there's only one person that can beat him in like this whole Earth, and it's Superman essentially.
And essentially, he wants to erase hope because, and yes, he says to Superman at the end, "I want to stay here, and there's only really room for one god,
for one godlike person here." Yeah, and it's going to be me.
It's going to
So
be
you
me.
got to get out of here. Yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of a villain who wants to erase hope, that's actually a really good Christmas villain, right? Because that's a
Yeah.
season of hope.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. And so of course him being, the this inspiration and like this paragon of hope. I mean, it's right away that there's going to be some trouble.
And there is, because he traps him in this 4-hour loop.
Yeah.
And one of the things I love so much about this loop, besides the fact that, like every Groundhog Day scenario, the main character gets more and more exhausted. The longer it goes on, he just gets more and more annoyed.
Mm-hmm.
But also, besides the fact that with each version, the people around him lose more hope.
They lose more hope.
Christmas becomes less and less in each version. The tree starts to shrink. The decorations become fewer. The music, I think this is why they chose the same song the whole time. Besides repetition, it gets like slower and more drawn out. Like I thought it was a really clever way to.
Well, and then also the peace accords that were happening in like the Middle East or something like start falling apart as well.
Yep.
They're like, we might be on the brink of a war, kind of a thing.
And Lois becomes less and less confident in her work. It's crap. Like in the last one, it's crap. And she just throws it away without even
throws it in the trash. Ma and Pa Kent are there because they caught an earlier flight and took a cab, and
they're losing
he's just more and more. He's like, I don't know what we're gonna do. I can't afford the payments, and
by the end he's like, I'm losing everything, my farm, my wife, everything. Like, he gets so
because she gets more annoyed with him too. Like, I don't know what do you want me to do? You've been, that's all you talk about. And I mean, it's it's interesting because you're right. Like, you think about Groundhog Day and it's just normal for people. They're just, I mean, it's the first time they've gone through it, so it's just more and more. But because he's taking away hope, then everything is deteriorating.
Including the bank robber outside, who Superman just gets tired of dealing with. He eventually reaches into the car and grabs the gun. You're not going to rob this bank. I'll see you later. We'll finish this talk later.
And he just crumbles the gun
with a really bad sound effect. It sounded like a car crashing.
It was like bad. Yeah. I know what they were going for. They were going for like busting metal, breaking metal, but it didn't fit at all. So like there's a few tasks that throughout the day that he had done. So he saves a millionaire from falling. It turns out later on that the millionaire is trying to kill himself. But the first time he's like, how can I ever repay you? Let me give you something. He's like, your gratitude. That's all I need. Don't give me anything. So
again, very Superman type thing.
That's very Superman. And then the next time he's like, no rewards necessary. It's like, rewards. Who said anything about rewards? In their second iteration. And by the third time he's like, hey, I saved you. And he's like, well, who asked you to do that? And it's just, it's funny. And all these little things that are going on. Jimmy's girlfriend, his new girlfriend, the first time she's like a Rhodes Scholar, and she keeps getting trashier and trashier.
She becomes like a streetwalker by the end. It's so funny.
And there is a great line because he introduces her the very first time, like, she's a Rhodes Scholar and this and this, and then like the third or fourth time he's like, well, she's no Rhodes Scholar.
And then so Clark, Superman obviously knows something's going on. He's not an idiot. He's stuck in this loop, and he tries to get Lois to keep remembering. And I love the scene. It was one of the final iterations where he's like, "Here, just watch. She's gonna come through the door looking like a street hooker. He's gonna fall with the throat because the guy keeps falling and knocking. What was it? The eggnog or something?
Eggnog, I think.
Yeah. And it's so funny. Like, it reminded me, like,
because then that also happens. Her mom comes and complains about her dad, and of course, as she mentioned in the other episode, she's a recovering alcoholic. But she goes.
And Perry White complains he's going to have to spend Christmas with his ex.
Perry,
because it's a family. It's his family.
And Perry's lamenting the fact that his kids are all grown and not going to be there. He never got to play Santa for them, and so there's like a whole thing.
And there's that one guy
that's like gets
when
super
they
drunk.
first step off the elevator. At first, it's like "Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas." Then by the final iteration, it's just like
cries.
sobbing and like doesn't say anything. He's just like. It's really well done. It's really funny.
It was funny. Oh man! So they do some, they manage to kind of Superman's hope, because he says, I love these people, because essentially Mr. Mixie-Pitlick gives him an ultimatum, like you said, either you or me, or you can.
Well, and this is right after Pa
Kent
Kent dropped from a heart attack or something. Right. And this is where he froze the scene, and he's like, okay, you've seen enough. And
so he's like, well, which is it going to be? Are you going to take, fly away and leave this planet and let me rule it? Or are you just going to keep seeing people die? And he's like, I love these people, which is why I'm not going anywhere. And like,
which is awesome.
He's like, I took away your hope. And he's like, there's always hope, and because total of his Superman. Hope, it like, it
unfreezes Lois.
It unfreezes Lois too, yeah. And
which that was kind of cheesy then when Lois had her revelation there.
Well,
that was kind of
It didn't help that there was like a hard, commercial break there.
Yeah.
so so in the next time loop, she also remembers because of that. And so, she knows he's like an imp or demon or whatever. And so she starts to do research and kind of figures out that at least in a lot of the myths, the way to get them out was to get them to say their name backwards, which is another funny bit where he's like, I can barely say it forwards. So I enjoyed that part. But so, they figure out, well, if he's taking away hope, we got to do everything we can to give people hope. And so he has this whole thing planned where before the guy even goes to rob the bank, he spoke with the bank manager to hire the man as a new head of security, and he gets his family there. And it's like, I mean, it's so great because not only that, he gets an advance on his salary, and because the guy that was robbing the bank was doing it because he was laid off. Things were starting to be tight. He didn't know what else to do.
As good as Superman is, I wouldn't say no to him knowing he can bend steel. Exactly. You want me to give a guy a job? Done.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then, the bank robber even does this cool thing where he hides the gun and he starts zipping up his coat, to kind of hide it because his kids are there. And the more Superman says anything, it's like he'll be there to be able to stop bank robberies kind of a thing. And then he zips up his coat even more.
And then at the office, it's a total elf moment. The best way to spend Christmas cheer.
I knew you'd like that
loud for all to hear.
Yeah, they do the deck the halls and get everybody involved. And Superman saves the millionaire, but he's like, I know you're lonely. You have all this millions. You've shut yourself off away from the world, and you want to spend time with people. So he's like, I have a way you can fix this, because there's an orphanage that needs help and whatever. And so they go to the Daily Planet and they do that whole thing, like you said, with the best way to spread Christmas cheer. And they start singing Deck the Halls and everybody gets into it. And, Mixie appears again. He's like, hey, what's going on here? You're not supposed to have hope. And they just keep singing. And you get the best part, my favorite part, because by this time Perry White is dressed up as Santa, because that was another way to give him hope, was to get him to kind of live through that regret that he had of never getting to play Santa for his kids. And so he's dressed like that. He's handing out presents, and he hands out this big one to Mr. Mixie-Pitlick. And so they're like, hey, he's like, hey, I've never got a present before. And they're like, read who it's, read it. He's like, our beloved or something, or our dear, something like that. And he's like, oh, I love that.
That's like a classic Christmas special thing, right?
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Think about like Frosty when Santa promises to give him the new hat if Professor Hickenlooper or whatever his name is goes away.
If he goes and writes all that, yeah. You're right, it is. And so he's excited, and they're like, well, we'll read who it's from. And so I'm not even going to try because I'm going to butcher it, but he says the word backwards, which was his name, from, it's like, oh, that's Mr. Mixie's Pitlick backwards. You tricked me. And I'm not leaving. And he starts disappearing. It was good. It was like a clever way to kind of tie into Christmas with with getting him to say his name backwards. I really thought that was clever.
Yeah, no, I did too. And
yeah,
this one, just between the humor and the story and the atmosphere, this one just felt the most Christmassy to me.
Same here. Yeah, and then of course because he went back to the fifth dimension, all the magic that he had done like reverts back. So the tree immediately grows again, and everybody's happy and fine and all that stuff. And
so this is like a perfect example too of how selfless Superman actually is when he was willing to, I love these people, that's why I'm staying.
Mm-hmm.
He could have been like, okay, and stopped the time loop when Pa Kent could have like died right there if he wanted him to. So that was a chance he was taking, but that is again so
it's very Superman. Yeah.
Very Superman. Like he was risking something he loved, someone he loved, to save the planet.
I like when he tells the bartender his his evil plan. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna give up hope, and everyone around him just looking at him like he's crazy. And
he was a fun villain. I think that's why I like this one a lot too. Like compared to nothing against George Jefferson or or the annoying woman in the second one, but he was the most fun of the three villains.
He was, yeah. I agree. Yeah, I really liked his version of Mr. Mixie's Pitlick. Also because hearing him say it aloud helped me say it.
Oh yeah, like it's one of those names like in the comics when it comes up, like I know who it is, and I'd like know if I kind of brush over it because I don't even know how to pronounce it. Same it's like Mr. M. Mr. M.
I do the same thing. I kind of skip over it. But oh man, so I gotta say, we've been talking about it. What would you say is your happiest moment with not only the show but maybe Superman in general?
Ooh, Superman in general.
Yeah.
Every time I know this question is coming, you have to give me a second.
Is this like your ratings on Tis a Podcast? I know. Yeah. I know I have to rate it.
My happiest moment was Superman in general.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've mentioned before, I don't know if it's on your show, my show, a Patreon episode, what. So I love Batman and Superman working together.
Yes.
One of my favorite storylines is Tower of Babel.
Ooh, that's such a good one.
I love the end of that one, where Superman's not really angry at the end with what Batman did. But he does genuinely question him, like, what happens if you ever go rogue? Batman's like, well, I have a contingency plan for that too, and it's you. But Superman lets him keep the kryptonite ring because he knows.
Yeah,
he knows if he ever goes bad, which he is always very consciously aware of in the comics too, that he does. Batman is the only one who would be able to stop him, and I just love that. I love Superman's very aware of it, and Superman doesn't give up on this guy who is polar opposite of him. I mean, he's not a villain, but just the darkness to his light, like not optimistic at all. Like he considers that his best friend. And I love that. But besides that, like you said earlier, I love the little Superman moments, stopping a jumper from killing himself, but speaking to him for hours, rescuing a kid's cat from a tree. Like all these things are just so quintessentially Superman for me.
Yeah.
And go back to the original Superman the movie, the end when he flies away from Earth and winks at the camera. Like that always gets me.
Perfect.
Always gets me.
It's such a perfect moment. It really is. Yeah. It's funny. With the show specifically, it would be, watching it with my wife, but Superman in general, I think even though he's had some amazing comic runs with some great writers, and even though I love watching him in the Justice League, I think it has to be seeing him fly for the first time in Superman the movie. That was, it blew my mind as a kid, and just like, and and I really believed that Christopher Reeve was Superman, and he's always, I love Superman. He's always been one of my favorites, but he's never been quite. I mean, he's no Batman. Let's face it. But at the same time, there's always something special about him because he is, as we were talking about earlier, he is that like emblem of hope, that beacon,
Right.
you know, that you look to as like the pinnacle of superhero-ness, superheroism, I should say. And it just so for me, seeing him fly that first time in that movie, it every time I think of it, I think of like that, just the innocence and the awe and the wonder, and it. So that's what I think of when I think of Superman. You know.
I mean, he's who you aspire to be, right? And that's kind of why Lex Luthor hates him so much. He's because he's
Yeah.
not human. He's like, you shouldn't aspire to be this alien.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
he has more humanity than so many humans,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and that's
Especially
what
Lex
makes him
Luthor.
right. And I would like to say too, like that we mentioned it earlier when I was talking about the lightheartedness of this show and how I wish they did more stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
I would love one day, whether Marvel or DC, whatever, they should both of them have villains where you could easily set one of these comic movies at Christmas between Mr. Cold, Mr. Freeze. Like there's so many like
Mm-hmm.
villains who would fit right around the holiday season, and like again, Superman, perfect example of a hero who embodies what Christmas spirit is about. It seems a natural fit to do like a movie set at Christmas with Superman, right?
Yeah, for real.
Like,
I mean,
you
well,
know,
they did that with Shazam. Yeah.
right? Well, right, and it worked so well.
Yeah.
But like even Batman, like Gotham's a gloomy place in general, always dark. Set one at Christmas, add some snow, which they did with Batman Returns.
Yeah.
But you know, you could do such a good emotional Mr. Freeze story because Mr. Freeze is one of those villains who has this hope. He wants to save his wife, and he's reverting to the bad things to do it. And like, oh man, and that's something. By the way, I just want to say about Batman real quick. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I wish they would show that more in the movies because they show it in the comics so well. Batman, that's why part of the reason Batman never kills, because he does want to help his villains redeem themselves. He does want to see them, like Harley Quinn's a perfect example. Mr. Freeze is another example. They are people who have had these misfortunes befall them, and he wants to see them get better. And I wish that's something we saw more in the films. Like, not just him wanting to lock them in jail, but he is actively hoping they reform.
Yeah.
But
You're right. I mean, I can't argue with any of that because I agree.
I mean, you could do a Flash movie with Mr. Cold. Like, Captain Cold. There are so many different options. Do a Justice League movie with, I don't know.
Yeah. It could be really cool. I agree. And I mean, I know Shane Black tried to set Iron Man 3 at Christmas, but it
hard to do in LA. Hard to do in California.
Well, even then, it's just not really. He barely had any Christmas in it, and so it didn't feel like it was at Christmas. You know,
right.
It's definitely set at Christmas and not a Christmas movie. So.
Well,
right.
We are getting the Batman Long Halloween animated film, two parts next year, which I'm super excited for.
Yep.
But you want to talk about animated films, do Batman Noel as an animated film. Hour, 20 minutes. Perfect.
Yep.
Have a DC comic movie to watch every Christmas.
Yeah.
Besides Batman Returns.
And Shazam.
And Shazam.
Oh, man. Well, now we come to my favorite part of the show, which is what I like to call Gag Me with the Spoon. And this one, we're not going to do any voting on it. We're just going to have fun with it because it's a bonus episode, and why not? So I just want to hear your best, worst impression of your least favorite part. And I would honestly just set us up, and I'll let you go first.
I don't have the exact quote. Do you want to help me out here? Maybe you know the exact quote.
Okay. It was which part?
It was in the first one.
Okay.
Okay, you can either help me with it's not my least favorite part, but it's a quote that made me laugh, or it's my least favorite quote. Either or. I really liked what Perry White said at the beginning when he was on the phone with his girlfriend about dressing up in that Santa suit, and and then I really liked George Jefferson's monologue to himself as he's dumping the stuff in the water. And he's like, I'll teach Metropolis. And this is Martha Kent when she's speaking to Clark after he's been gassed by the rat. Clark, I never spanked you. I never had to. But right now, I'd like to drop your britches and tan your hide like cheap leather.
Yep, that was definitely a funny one. So I chose one from the fourth season episode. It's when he's talking, when Mr. Mixie Spitlick is talking to the bartender, telling him his evil plan. And he says that he's going to, take away hope. And he goes, take away hope? How do you plan on doing that? It's just his face and his expressions are just, I was like, so that's why I picked that part.
That's a pretty decent, Bronx type bartending accent you just did.
Oh, thanks. Oh man, it's fun to do those. So I gotta ask, what would you say, because G.I. Joe taught us that knowing is half the battle, so what would you say is the other half of the battle?
Well, who are we to argue with Superman, right? Because Superman is the granddaddy of all superheroes, and he basically confirmed to us this episode what Buddy the Elf taught us in 2003. The best way to spread Christmas cheer is singing loud for all to hear. And not only does that get Santa's sleigh to fly, but it also beats little magical pixies from the fifth dimension.
Yep, it's true. Although I did love how he made Lois sing. He kind of looked at her and just kind of raised his eyebrows like, go on. I wonder if he just didn't want to sing himself. I don't know. But so yeah, mine, it's better. That's much better than mine. Mine was, if knowing is half the battle, the other half is making sure that your Clark and your Superman are much more different from each other.
Oh, that's accurate too. That is very accurate.
Oh man, Anthony, it's been a blast talking with you, man. It always is. It's always so much fun.
I love it. I am always thankful when you have me on as a guest, especially when we get to geek out over comic book stuff.
Yes.
Which I don't want to spoil anything for your listeners, but I am very excited for a future episode that me and Tom are both going to be on with you.
Yeah, and I don't mind spoiling it for him. So you guys are going to come back. I want you and Tom, since you're both such big Batman fans, to come back and have a whole episode. It'll be in December, and it will be about the Batman, some of the comics, Christmas comics of Batman from the 1980s. And of course, late 70s. I'm super excited about it as well. And it's Batman. How can you go wrong with Batman? And Christmas. You can't go wrong with Christmas.
And just so you know, we've talked about this. You'll be on our show long before this because you're making your rounds on all the podcasts. Like, you just have a rotating schedule.
Apparently, yeah.
But originally planned for next June, but now pushed to next October to coincide with the Batman release date. We are covering the Batman the Animated Series Christmas episodes, the 3 of them, plus the one Justice League Christmas episode. So you will definitely be a guest when we do those, because those are a lot of fun.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
I mean, Christmas Eve with the Joker is a classic.
I love when Joker's just singing Jingle Bells, Batman Smells.
When he turns that tree into a rocket at Arkham and just goes blasting through the roof.
Man, they did the Joker so well in that show. I mean, they really did. They captured everything. And of course, Mark Hamill is like the best Joker ever.
He really is.
So I can't wait. Yeah, that's going to be great. But since we're talking about your show, why don't you go ahead and tell us more about it?
So, it's a podcast. If you haven't heard, I mean, most of your listeners will have heard me plug it before, but I'll plug it again. It's a show where me and 2 co-hosts, Julia and Tom, talk Christmas movies and television specials, and sometimes comics in bonus episodes, and sometimes Halloween in bonus episodes. And basically, it's a podcast that drops every week in which we try to keep the Christmas spirit alive 365 days a year by geeking out over all this Christmas content. And it's full of snark and epic trolling and basically wholesomeness provided by Julia as she tries to corral Tom and I into playing those. But it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Jerry's been on multiple times. Todd Killian of Christmas Clatter has been on multiple times. Mm-hmm. I mean, who are some of your other guest stars here, Jerry? You've had Tim Babb. He's been on once.
Yep.
Have you had Mike Westfall? Mm-hmm. He's been on once. April Riley. She's been on multiple times.
Yep.
So a lot of people you all have heard here have been on our show, and and that's, I've said it before, I'll say it again. That's one thing I love about our little Christmas podcast community. It's where we are all one big happy family.
I agree. Yep, I feel the exact same way. And you guys are, seriously, and some of my best friends now.
100% ditto. And I can't. One of these days, all of us have got to do like a big meetup somewhere. We really do.
Yeah, I agree.
We have to find some kind of Christmas event or do our own like convention or something, and it would be fun.
We should just do a Christmas pod convention. But on that note, I'm going to say everything about the fifth dimension is awful. So find us as always on our social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you're feeling like the Man of Steel fighting his rogues gallery at Christmastide, leave us a review on iTunes. Not only does it help us reach more people, but you also get a free sticker. Now don't forget to vote. Later, dudes.
You said there was no voting this episode.
Oh, yeah. Oops. Okay, let me rephrase that. Now, don't vote. Later, dudes.